And joining us live in studio is Opa Budibe, Gauteng Department of Education acting spokesperson. We have Matakanya, General Secretary of National Association of School Governing Bodies, and Professor Elias Matipa, education expert on the line. And to you at home, you most welcome to give us a ring on 011-542-2186 or join us on social media. Gentlemen, good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Mr. Budibe, I suppose congratulations are in order overall. It seems that the system worked fairly well as expected, 100,000 registrations so far, but of course no system is entirely foolproof. What went wrong?
Okay, thank you. We are now sitting at about 108,000, and if you're thinking about the expected number of applications being 312,000, so on the first day we are almost there, and we're hoping that things can move so as smoothly as they've moved today. But obviously there have been some few, what we would say, minor problems compared to last year. So in cases like parents will say, I already exist on the system and I can't log in. So those parents were assisted because then all they had to do was to reset their passwords. Some parents were getting error messages, and those error messages were purely because either the network on their side was poor or that they've committed an error. But as soon as we pick that up, we'll fix it. Then parents would not receive a reference number, so they'll get an SMS without the reference number. That also has been fixed, and most of these parents will get their reference numbers this evening still.
All right, so please keep the thought on education, especially going digital or e-education, as it were. We have Pete in Gauteng. Good evening to you and welcome. Hi.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I have 2 or 3 views. The first one is that I drive through 2 squatter camps on my way to work, and it's interesting that about 70% of the people walking around there have cell phones, and I'm not so sure about the stick savvy issue. You know, I mean, everybody is tech savvy these days, even people that's unemployed. Secondly, I look at the officials in the views, and I see they wear suits and ties, and the whole schooling system, the whole basis of schooling, that's all colonialist, isn't it?
Pete,
those are my
your
2 points.
Oh.
My point is that the whole issue is part and parcel colonialistic, first of all, and secondly, we are all tech savvy. Nobody in South Africa is not tech savvy anymore. Thank you.
All right, much appreciated. And when it comes to Mr. Matakanya, the whole argument around decolonizing the education system, and yet, as our caller observed, that we still English is the medium of instruction. We go on a technology space to now do registrations, which still would limit access to the majority of South Africans. What are we saying? What message are we relaying here?
Cindy, once again, thank you very much, and thank you very much, AN7 and all the listeners. Change is painful, and on earth there is nothing that does not change except change itself. So we are in a new South Africa, and I believe the Department of Education is trying its level best to change everything so that it suits our children, it suits our society, it suits our parents to the level of competing with the world. Because you see now, this revolution of the IT, we are going to compete with and we cannot say no, we must not change because we are still going to use English. And I think the Department of Education also has introduced what you call the incremental introduction of African languages. So it is incremental, bit by bit by bit, until we reach a stage where we feel that now, proudly, we can use our languages to teach our children, we can use our languages in our technology. And secondly, we want just to call upon all the parents in South Africa, particularly in Gauteng, to say, this is the change. They must ensure that they move with the times. They should not lag behind, because once they lag behind, other nations will always conquer them. So that's what I'll call once again.
All right, but I think that the education process could have started before the system was launched so that parents are more equipped and can access the facilities. But we'll get back to that. Woma, good evening to you. Thanks for calling. Hi, Woma.
Good evening, lady. I just have a question. Does this the online system can also include the 4.5 years kids? Because we sit now with 4.5 years kids in grade R, and we can't accept that because, as my knowledge is, we must sit with 5 years who turn 6 in grade R. So please, can you tell me, does this system also allow the 4.5 years?
But how were those kids admitted in the first place? Was it a more manual or conventional way, or do they go through the initial application system? Wilma?
Excuse me?
No, I was saying, how did they gain entry into school if they didn't have, or rather qualify based on the age?
You know, at the time when I came there at the school, I just go through the age pension, and I see this is 4.5 kids on my register. So when I moved back to the office and asked them, does this kid belong here? Because it's my knowledge, this kid must already be 5 and turn 6 on.
All right, Vilma, thanks so much. Sorry, dear, thanks, but we get the gist of it. And Chris, thanks so much for your call. Good evening. Hi, Chris.
Hello?
Yes, we're listening.
Yes, thank you for accepting my call. May I just make a comment here about the education system here? I'm privileged to have been educated at the higher level outside the country during the apartheid system, and came back during the 1994 era. I've seen a lot of discrepancies, especially with the academia of this country. They are the people who are supposed to be leading the role.
I'm going to ask you to be brief, please, Chris.
Okay. My put is South Africa should make a case study with a certain country and bridge the gap, because we are so tied to the system that we found in place, and people are not even ready to change, especially the syllabus system in South Africa is a bit of lower standard. Thank you.
All right, much appreciated. We'll pose that to Professor Elias Matiba, education expert. Chris saying that we're essentially not creating, or rather producing, the caliber of leaders and workers that future industries will require. In fact, even jobs that are non-existent at the moment. This technology might be a step in the right direction. Professor Matiba?
Hello.
Yes, sir. I was saying just about the technology. Do you think this is the right direction for South Africa to take in closing the digital divide, one, and also creating convenience for online applications?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for the viewers. Remember, education is a right. That's where I will start off with. And then being a right, I am going to look at the admission, online admission, policy. The ICT is not a user-friendly thing or instrument. Most of our parents, especially the older ones, are not that much vested with the usage of the ICT. So it might exclude some of the students. I'm happy to hear that the system has improved tremendously. And Ramatakana has also spoken about us moving in the same direction as the world is moving, so that we should not remain behind. And that is where the digital introduction is also of more importance in education. But however, when you look at the parents and the issue of passport, the issue of birth certificate, the issues of addresses, then you realize that not all the children who are supposed to be at school next year will all find their spaces, because some parents are not able to use the ICT to their advantage. So there should be a special accommodation for those who would be struggling at the beginning of the year, so that we should not have one size fitting all this thing, which will fit all the applications.
Yeah,
But,
please stay on the line, Professor Matipa. Sorry to interrupt you. Calvin in Johannesburg, good evening to you.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks. Well, actually, I don't have a problem with online, even though somehow, it's not everyone who's capable of using online. But what I think is supposed to be done is, because of most of us blacks, we are not exposed to electronics. But some of us are doing exposed, only the children which are exposed. In that case, find out that parents who are supposed to register their children, they are not able to maybe to go through and register at the same time. But my question actually is about improvement of education itself, whereby the governing body, I think these two to be separated. The governing body should be part of training the parents to know exactly how to register online. While the teacher on the other side should improve the teaching, because what I'm worried about is the outcome of the teaching itself. Because we found out that on the system we are very good, but now on the outcome, the education department is very suffering, or maybe very poor. Because of what? We don't interlink the parents and the system. We only interlink the system on the level whereby we advertise ourselves on the high level. So my concern is interlinking the two. If you improve online, improve also education outcome from our children should be exposed, because what we are doing now, we are running away from our own culture, because we found out the school or the South African schools, they don't teach our language as blacks. Yep. Only for whites.
All right, so Calvin, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for your call, Samuel. And Mpumalanga, good evening to you.
Evening, how are you, man? I'm
good, thank you.
Yes.
Your question or comment?
Yeah, I've actually two questions to pose on the panel. The first question actually is that you need to also understand that South Africa as a country has become actually a sort of a global village, in the sense that we have learners coming from the entire world coming to school in South Africa. And this idea of imposing subjects on learners that are coming from international schools does not make sense. That's number one. And the age issue also does not make any significant sense, because we have from other neighboring countries learners going to school as early, grade 1 as early as 4.5, 5 years. And they're doing exceptionally well even at university. This explains why we have the youngest graduate from Zimbabwe with a PhD, only 23 years old. Then the question is, why do we continue to insist on age? Yet we, from other neighboring countries, we have other neighboring, even disadvantaged countries.
And those children are admitted in school. I appreciate it, Samuel. Thanks so much. Just your response, Mr. Modibe, and it's quite a few. We'll start with the age policy and also the quality of the education itself, so that this is not just a superfluous or nice to have application, but that it actually contributes to the outcome of our learners.
Okay. Now, thank you, and thank you to the viewers for some of the insights and questions. On the issue of who can apply online, any parents who wants their child to be in grade 1 next year can apply online, and any parents who want their child to be in grade 8 can apply online. So, for example, if the viewer's question understood it to say there's a child in grade R and needs to be in grade 1 next year, so that parent can apply online. Secondly, we are alive to the reality that if we are to change the perception about education, we must improve quality across. And we think that the investment that we've been doing over the past 20 years are beginning to bear fruit. Take, for example, the recent results, metric results. Most of the performance come from township schools. We have 13 schools that achieved 100%. And so, which means that we're beginning to see the shift in the system.
Yeah, but are these these learners equipped enough to survive higher education or even employment? Are they employable?
No, sure, but that's a different question. The issue is about are we now improving the quality of education to sort of now relieve the demand for schools in the suburbs? And we see the system is stabilizing. 70% of all of our learners are in the townships. The migration into suburban school has stabilized. And obviously, we are saying that if you're looking at outcomes, there are improvements in outcomes. You can take any international measure and see how Gauteng is performing in those international measures, whether it's about literacy, whether it's about science. We're even performing better than the country. And so the recent teams show that Gauteng alone contributed a lot in the improvement of outcomes.
Yeah, but what about the preferential treatment, as it were, to parents who already are tech savvy and have the facilities to apply online?
We have taken that into account. That's why we established 65 operation centers across the province so that the parents can walk in there and they'll find an official from the department who will help them apply. They can even go to a school and a school will help them apply. But also let's take this in context. We say we're expecting 312,000 total applications. On the first day, 100,000 have applied. So let's give credit to the parents. So we assume that parents cannot actually use the system, but 108,000 of them today use the system.
But they're likely to hit a snag in the value chain of the system, and this is where the school governing body will come in, because it is still at the discretion of the school whether that pupil will be admitted or not. The registration online does not guarantee you placement. But before you respond, Matakanya, we have a caller, Betty in Gauteng. Thanks for your patience. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, I've got one concern. It's a good system, but I've got one concern. If you've got a child who's been in the school in town, now for whatever reason you come back to the location due to some reason, and then this child was never exposed in African languages. He's been learning in English. So you apply for this child. They want the child to be in the location because now you're staying in the location. In that case, what do you do? Because they won't allow you to take the child into town because they say you're staying in the location, you must go to the nearest school.
All right, thank you so much, Betty. We'll find out if the address still applies in this case on the system. Professor, in your view, this has been essentially a barrier to entry for quote-unquote good schools based on your location. Do you think that the education department, at least in Gauteng, has managed to be more inclusive and not keep people out of the system, as it were? Professor? Hi,
Hello.
Professor Matipa. Yes, I was saying the requirement of living in a particular area and a particular radius has excluded a lot of people from end quote good schools. Do you think that this has been adequately addressed?
I think it has been adequately addressed, but not 100%, because all that we need is to have the schools having the right resources, like those who are in the urban areas, say in suburban areas or in the cities. They have got the better facilities. If we were to concentrate on giving the schools in the locations better facilities, I think the problem would be dealt with, and then solved. The problem is that we don't have facilities that are up to standard.
So development at grassroots levels. Thank you so much, Professor Matipa. Rematakanya, the whole question around schools imposing, or rather the system imposing the school of your choice, as we heard from Betty, who's now relocated and a child can't go to a school of her choice. How then is this supposed to be an inclusive process where you can access any school and the quality of education you want?
Thank you, Cindy, once again. Let's firstly let's get the role and responsibility of the school governing bodies is to determine the policy. And in this case then is the admission policy. And that admission policy probably would not talk in terms of discrimination. They would admit any child based on the merit. And in this case then, if then there is capacity, there is no capacity, then they will not decide who comes to that school. And another thing is that now there is also a policy that talks to the radius, how far is the child. But I think in Gauteng particularly, I think there's a regulation that indicates really which children are to be admitted and all those children are to be admitted without discriminating those children. If a parent works in Sandton, then the child stays in Soweto, then that child has also the right to. So probably that will be the first preference. The first preference. When you work in Sandton, then the first preference will be the school next to where you work. But if the school becomes full, then obviously then if then you apply, then they will locate you to a school because the school is now full.
But then it's misrepresentation because the system says you can apply for any school of your choice. I don't know if there's a disclaimer, but before you explain, Remo Dibe, let's take our last caller, Vauma in George. Good evening to you.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, Tunde.
Yes, we can hear you, Vauma. Yes, thanks.
My story is not what you are discussing right now, but it regards the school system. In my area, there's a principal that chases children from the school for being naughty or whatever. I've tried the MEC of the Western Cape, they ignored me. Now this thing is going way out of hand. There is more than 50 children that's been expelled under the age of 15. I really am looking for a journalist that will come to our area and expose this. The NPL of the DA and the NPL of the ANC has ignored us. Please, we're in a dire strait here. The parents don't know who to turn to because we can't trust anybody.
Vauma, please leave your details with our producers, and you can also send us an email, assignment@ann7.com, assignment@ann7.com. Thanks so much for that call. Just the issue again of whether the address system applies based on which school you go to, and also if your preferred school is not available, what recourse do parents have?
Okay, thank you, Cindy. I think let's dispel the myth that equity is not being addressed here. It may not be perfect, but that's not the situation here. And the situation is not even about parents that are living in the township wanting to access schools in the suburbs. The profiles and the populations have dynamics in the suburbs have changed. They are mostly black. And so the issue is that the schools in the suburbs are becoming largely black because of the change in those dynamics. But let's talk to the issue of the system. The system gives you the following options. You can use a home address, you can use a work address, you can even choose a school where a sibling is at the school. In the event that none of those fit your profile, you can then do a school of choice option, which is where you're going out of your zone to apply for a school that is outside of your zone.
But is there adequate, sorry to rush you,
Sure.
we're really out of time. Very briefly, can you take the viewers into your confidence that the system is fair, it's transparent, and there is adequate oversight? In the case where schools, for whatever reason, will decide they don't want a particular learner and use some technical exclusion.
Okay, so that's why we have an online application system, because now we have a centralized database of all applications, whereas before all these applications will reside at a school, and the department will not have a sight of any of these applications, and there will be a dispute of facts between the school and the parent as to whether the application has been actually submitted.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. There's huge interest, of course, and concern from parents on the education online application process. Let us know how it goes for you. Assignment@ann7.com. We'll take a quick ad break.